Well, Rosie, I was listening to your coverage on the radio the other day when we got the clinch and all the interviews from the locker room. And, you're as big a part of this team as a lot of the players. And, talk about that experience being down there and the jubilation that you were able to take in from these guys, coaches, players, and such.
Ray, it's interesting because hopefully we'll be able to compare a lot of different locker room celebrations this fall. But the ones where over the years where they clinch a regular season title or postseason berth, as it were, last Thursday. But I think really the American League Central Division titles, it's kind of a combination of not relief, but it's been such the baseball season is so long. There's so many games, and that is the true test of a really good team. And when you can win a division title, I think there is that real sense of accomplishment in there. And then they blow off steam like nobody's business. The loud music, the champagne flying, the beer flying. There's so much of it down there, and very little of it gets drunk because they're throwing it at everybody. And it's just, guys, I think the common thread of most of those teams is the togetherness of those teams. And you really see that in those situations.
When you talk about the players, a couple of guys, this has been a true essence of a team, in my standpoint, different guys at different times. But how about the years that Josh Naylor put together, over 100 RBIs? And of course, Emmanuel Clase took his game to yet another level.
Yeah. Going into the season, Ray, both very good players, keys to this ball club. But you're right. They raised their game to another level. And I think really in Josh's case, he stayed healthy all year. And we've seen the years where he hasn't been able to and how that impacts the team. So him being able to be on the field most of the time this year, there was a little stretch there where they needed to give him a break, but not much. And that's made a huge difference. Not only his production, but what that production has meant for the guy who hits ahead of him, Jose Ramirez. So, that's where that team concept comes in. And for Emmanuel Clase, look, he led the major leagues in saves the last 2 years, more than 40 saves the last two seasons. He could have just said, you know what, that's fine. That's good. But how do you raise your level from that? And he did. Went to work in the offseason to figure out some finer points that might help him raise his game. And now he's the all-time and now single season save record holder in franchise history. And that's quite an accomplishment. And there's a good chance he leads Major League Baseball in saves again. The kid from St. Louis might have something to say about that at the end. But the best compliment he could get, I was talking to Tim Herron, who's one of the five rookies and the three rookies who have been critical in getting games to Clase to be able to save them. And I asked him, I said, what's it like doing that for Emmanuel Clase? He said, when I'm done playing, I'll be able to look back and say, I played with the greatest closer ever. So that's how his teammates hold him in that regard. And who knows if he is or not, but certainly he's having a season that would say that. And it's been remarkable.
A couple of other guys I wanted to bring up. Lane Thomas. We've really seen the true Lane, the last 4 or 5 weeks after coming into a new club, maybe having a tough time settling in. He's been on fire. And how about Kyle Manzardo the last 3 weeks, playing himself, I don't know how to work out, onto a playoff roster maybe. Those two guys have been red hot with the sticks.
And it's huge, Ray, because look, in the month of August was a struggle offensively. Really, since the All-Star break, the team was not clicking the way it was. But those two have helped them start to get it going again in September, and the offense looks a lot better. Lane Thomas, tip of the cap for him, came over in the trade and then really struggled offensively. And I love his outlook on it. He says, I'm glad I struggled because it forced me to figure it out, which he's done in the past. He said, anytime you struggle, you figure out ways to get out of it, and you're much better on the other side because of that. So he's kind of glad he struggled so that it forced him to figure some things out that are really helping him now. And for Manzardo, tip of the cap to him for going down to AAA Columbus after the early season call-up and really trying to figure out how can I be effective as a designated hitter, which is not an easy thing for a young player. They all want to play a position. It's just easier to hit when you're playing a position because you're not thinking too much. But he figured out a routine that's allowed him to be effective now as a DH. And we're seeing some pop in the bat that we didn't see the first time around. And that's really encouraging.
Couple of other things I wanted to bring up this morning. Alex Cobb, what are you hearing about his availability, I should say, for the postseason?
Well, it's still up in the air, Ray. He's going to throw some sim games, and the hope is that he can get through those without the blister issues coming back on him. I think if he can show enough in those, he will be a factor. I don't know if it'll be the first series or not, because you're only going to need 3 starting pitchers. Maybe he's one of those 3. I think they'd like him to be one of those 3. But we'll see. He's got to be healthy and be able to throw. I think what we saw in his 2 starts was when he could throw that breaking stuff, look out. But that's maybe what aggravated the blister. So they're trying to figure out how he can throw all his pitches without aggravating the blister. And they're still working through that. He has been throwing, though, and that's encouraging. And it hasn't recurred yet. So they're trying to make sure it's strong enough to withstand pitching in a big game.
How nice Wednesday night to get Stephen Kwan back in that lineup, huh?
Goodness, Ray. And that's another thing we talked about. We've talked about Naylor, Thomas, Manzardo. The offense is different when Stephen Kwan is clicking. We saw that in the first half when they averaged almost 5 runs a game heading into the All-Star break. It's been well off of that since then. Some of that, when Kwan was healthy, he wasn't swinging the bat well, was going through the first extended slump of his career. And then the back issue flared up. I saw him in the clubhouse before the game Wednesday night, and he said, look, I'm not sure how it's going to go. He goes, I feel better, but we'll see. It's been a while since he's been out there. And son of a gun, first at bat, whack, home run. So that's really encouraging. If he can be the Stephen Kwan that we've seen so often, that's going to make a huge difference in October.
Can't wait for a playoff run and talk playoff baseball with you next, Rosie. Next week, I should say. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for taking time with us. We'll look forward to the calls against Houston this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week, my friend. Thank you.
You got it, Ray.